Hello there, everyone. Welcome to FiredUp. My name is Morgan McLintic, and I'm joined today by Nicole Pytel. Hey, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, Morgan. Hey, everybody. Happy end of H1.
End of H1 indeed. And so today we're going to be looking at some stats about what's happening in marketing and talking through the implications of that, because it felt like it's been a busy 6 months, and let's look at some of the data out there to talk about the implications of that. Before we dive into that, I do want to give a quick shout out about FiredUp Funded. And what is that, you say? It is our new podcast series that's coming out, interviewing CEOs and founders of startups about how they raised their funds. When they've just closed a deal, how did they close that deal? And why did they choose that VC? How did they convince that VC to invest in the company? What's their marketing opportunity? So a bit of a deep dive on a specific startup with the person who did the deal. I'm sure we can learn a lot from that. So we're very excited about that. It's going to be coming soon. So watch this space. All right. We're going to run through some statistics, and then we'll just talk about, okay, what are the implications of that? And you guys can decide, do you agree with these statistics? Are they under? Are they over? What are the implications? But we thought that that would help set the context of what everybody else is seeing, and we can chew on these. The first set here are all around generative AI. Of course, you've got to start there. A Salesforce data point here, 78% of B2B marketers are using generative AI tools to personalize messaging at scale. Nicole, what do you think of that?
I thought that number would be higher. I think the bombshell is that it's not 98%. Yeah, here we are, the giant pink elephant in the room of H1. I think it's shocking that it's only 78%. What do you think?
I'm sure it's a lot more than that. A couple of others here, one's from Gartner saying that 62% of marketers are using AI-generated video or voice in their campaigns, and 47% of marketers are repurposing long-form assets using the AI summarization, and that was up from 19% last year. So of those two, I think using AI to create derivative assets is massive. And again, probably it's more than 47%. I think that's one of the best use cases when it comes to content creation, is because you're taking something big and making it smaller. Gen AI is terrific at repurposing it into, if you want to do social posts, or you want to take this ebook and cut it into blog posts and sort of jump off from there. Really good at that. But what do you think about this video stat? 62% are using it in AI-generated video.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, because for a lot of smaller tech brands, the price tag associated with video can be a bit scary and overwhelming. But I've seen some really good AI-generated video that you might actually mistake for real. And I've seen some really bad AI-generated video. The same with voices. Some of the voices are decent. Some sound like a robot from the Jetsons. So I think if you're going to go that route, you cut some costs, just do it right. And be honest about what you're looking at and listening at on the screen, because if you think it sounds a little fake, everybody's going to think it sounds a little fake, and then no one's going to pay attention to what your video is actually about. They're just going to be paying attention to this funky, clumsy robot talking to them.
Yeah, I think that they've got to the point where they almost feel deep-faked when you realize this wasn't a person. And so I do think you need to flag maybe AI generated somewhere, like a little watermark, so that people don't walk away with that sort of bad taste where they're like, oh, you've tried to dupe me, that you didn't actually create this yourself with real people, if it has people in it. But I think using it to create backdrops to other messages, or in presentations, webinars, or emails even, where you're just sort of enhancing the format, I think is great. But I do worry a little bit about, okay, this is a cheaper way of doing it. Does it erode brand trust if people feel like they've been deep faked? I think approach with caution here. But honestly, I think we're going to see this go up massively. For example, in SEO, one of the key things is that the crawlers are looking for multiple different formats of content. So if you have SEO content, you could use text to speech or text to video generated there to summarize and then play a little video of the blog post or the glossary page, just to sort of mix it up a bit. And that's something that you wouldn't normally have done. I mean, clearly you're not going to have a person just read out a summary of a glossary page, but that might add a new content format to existing SEO content and just punch it up a little bit. Users might want that, and they'd have extra dwell time, and it would be cheap to do and scalable. So I think those kind of instances we're going to see a lot more of over the next year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Don't use it to make your overarching company explainer video that's going to be on your homepage that you're going to send out to potential investors. Invest in that. That's important. That's something that is used in a lot of different ways, and it's front and center for your brand. But I think the example you gave, Morgan, makes perfect sense.
So additional video content that you might not normally have. Quick video content for social, great. Often you're not going to create that. But just beware of that uncanny valley or deepfake element of it. All right. Next topic is zero-click content. Every company right now is super focused on the trend of zero-click behavior. We've just talked to Shane Jordan, our expert on that, on a recent edition of this podcast. Emerging best practices are coming. The tools to measure the performance are getting better. So what are the stats here? Zero-click search results rose by 68% in Q1. That's the SparkToro data point. 54% of buyers rely on the summary answers from conversational search before visiting a website. And that's LinkedIn study from April. So even that one's a couple of months old, and it was already over half of buyers using it. This is massive.
Yeah. 100%. These numbers are from a couple of months ago, so I'm sure they've gone up quite a bit. Since then, we've seen even the articles that say conversational search and AI is making us maybe not quite as bright as we once are because the AI is doing all the thinking for us. But, we were talking about this internally at Firebrand on what makes you actually click on one of the source links in an AI-generated answer. And there were a couple of different reasons we had, and I'd be curious to see from the audience what influences them and makes them click. But for us, it was a couple of different things. One, a very tactical reason is I want to check the context of a data point that it has given me. If I'm doing some research on something and you tell me, 62% of whatever, well, in what context I need to know more before I cite it officially somewhere. And then if I'm really interested in digging deeper into something that ChatGPT can't give me. Those were the two big things that us firebranders were talking about. Morgan, what about you? What makes you actually click on a link?
Well, I think it's, to your point on the data, I always click through to make sure that the data is correct and to source it, make sure that it's got it in context, because sometimes it can either hallucinate the data point or it can just misunderstand it. And often you'll click through to a page that has a wall of data points on, and some of the other data points might be better. And you can see in your own data what is driving ChatGPT or Perplexity to the traffic that you get onto your site. Where are they going? So you can see in GA4 the landing pages, and then you can look at the landing pages and see what the data points are or what the material is. And often it's very specific how-to information. It's densely packed with data, like Google Ads data, benchmark data, performance data from startups by different sizes in sectors, cybersecurity, fintech, etc., which we publish. And so, we get a lot of click-through to that. We have a lot of click-through to very specific, how do I configure this in GA4 kind of information that probably only exists in a few places on the web. I imagine most brands have their equivalent of those kinds of posts or reports. You can see that kind of content comes through richly. I think this zero-click behavior is massively changing the buyer and therefore marketers. All that top of funnel research that people do, they're not coming to your site anymore. They're just interrogating Claude or what have you, and asking the questions, asking it to generate tables, pros, cons, what have you heard? And so I think that you've got to appear in that, otherwise you're sort of invisible. Number one, brand is really important, and getting into those generative AI search platforms is really important. We've seen a huge rise in demand for GEO. You can't just jump to GEO. You have to, there are some specific best practices for GEO, for sure. There are differences between the way a search crawler is going to work and index and the way that a probabilistic engine is going to interpret the data. But a lot of the best practices for SEO work very well for GEO. So one is an extension of the other. You can't just cut the icing on the cake. You have to have the cake. And so I do think that they go hand in glove. But there are, clearly, we need an author page, an LLMS.txt file, and those little FAQs on the core pages. There's a ton of different best practices. But we definitely see people doubling down on that. But, skipping over the SEO and say, hey, I just want to get into this. I think a lot of them are very similar there. But it does make a massive difference in terms of how you measure your performance. Because if the buyers are doing all their top of funnel research, what does that mean for your website traffic and the goals, metrics that you should set yourself for performance? What are you thinking about that, Nicole?
Yeah, I think brands initially panicked because website traffic started going down. I think one thing that we've seen with a lot of our clients is AI-driven traffic has slowly been on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
We see peaks and valleys for clients that don't have a formal GEO strategy. So I think to your point, Morgan, you've got to have that strategy. If you're relying on luck and just, hey, I have good content, ChatGPT or Perplexity should like it, it may not be quite right. But what we are seeing in terms of metrics is a big one is AI-driven traffic. For most of the clients that I work with, the engagement rate of that traffic is much higher than their website as a whole, which I think ties back to that point of you want to dig deeper into something, you want to learn a little bit more, that kind of thing. And also, I think we're seeing website visitors arriving for the first time at a lower point in the funnel than they once did. They can get a short answer or a little tidbit of information about you without ever visiting your website. So I would expect to see overall engagement rates go up because people are theoretically lower in the funnel. I think that's one metric. I think other metrics are things maybe that you didn't think about so much before, like branded search impressions. Are those going up? Paid impressions, are those going up? There's things that you can look at. And our growth team has been working really hard to visualize a bunch of what we're calling awareness metrics. How many people actually know that you exist? Because it used to be that you could just say, well, all these people know we exist because they all came to our website. But there are a ton of people out there that could know you exist who've never been to your website. Right. So it's a whole new world in terms of metrics and what you should be looking for and what you should be optimizing for.
So brand lift, you've got to be measuring brand lift and investing in that to build your awareness, because you can't just rely on people finding you online in the same way, because you may never know. And so you've got to be able to look for other measures of brand. Most tech companies, they're not going to do a big primary survey for brand awareness. You have to look at other indicators. And that could be social followers, branded search, preference on social. There are other indicators that you need to sort of build a little sort of index of that. And then on your site, the lower level of traffic that is presumably higher engaged that's maybe coming through, or remembering you and coming back, repeat visitors. Hey, I found you on AI search, but now I'm coming back. That repeat visitor metric and engagement is really important. You've got to make sure that they have a distinct, good experience, right? And there's stuff for them to do, and that we're keeping them on the site a long time and educating them through the funnel at the bottom. There's less coming through, but we're supposed to convert them. It's supposed to be more highly engaged, but the website needs to do that. I mean, ultimately, there are even some people saying people will never come to the website, right? The website will go away because people will just be so reliant on AI search. And we're not there yet. I think it will take a long time to get there, but you've got to have the metrics in place to measure awareness and be driving that. Measure whatever you can in the AI search there, sort of eating the funnel. And then when people do come to your site, this is a thing that you can see. Those metrics, it's not overall web traffic, it's engagement, it's conversions, It's the level of repeat visitors that's going to give you a little bit more confidence that what you're doing is actually working.
Yeah, and for all of those people wondering, hey, should I still be publishing top of funnel content and things like that? Absolutely. Just because people may not be consuming it on your website, the LLMs have to pull it from somewhere. So if you're not putting out that educational content that we normally think of, maybe on your blog or something like that, still do that. Your educational content is as likely to be seen in an AI output as it is to be seen on your website. So don't think that no top of funnel website visitors means no top of funnel content, because it's still very, very important.
I think there's a temptation there to just go, well, look, all that top of funnel stuff that's a little bit more general, I'll just have ChatGPT create it, right? There's no value in creating that because I'll just press the button and out it comes. We have a bias on this, right? Because obviously as content marketers and people who just love the art of writing, to sort of hear this can just 100% be replaced by pressing a button. I honestly don't think that, though, when it comes to GEO and SEO, that's going to work, because what it's looking for is something authoritative with expertise. And without the right prompts and without your human input and your actual knowledge, if you just say define this term for SEO and I press the button, I don't know that the output from ChatGPT is going to become an authoritative input for GEO. I think that's a big risk, and you could spend time and effort doing that thinking you've got it covered. But the crawlers are going to go, okay, there's nothing unique here. There's no expertise. There's no authority. This is all generic. And I'm just going to discount that because there's a higher value source over here that I am going to cite. And so I do think there's a sort of trap of convenience here that, hey, I'll just have all that stuff. I can win this war by just programmatically creating Gen AI content that was going to get me ranked by AI search. And I think that's a big risk. I mean, Google has said, look, they don't necessarily detect AI generated stuff, but those detectors are getting better. And what they are saying, though, is we are looking in AI overviews for authority. And I don't think the output from ChatGPT on its own has that authority.
No, and I think we'll call this a H1 prediction. You usually make these at the end of the year, but I'm going to make a prediction that I think this is going to become like keyword stuffing 2.0, because you looked at Google maybe 15 years ago and keyword stuffing was right at the top. And then Google got really smart and spotted that stuffed keyword content and it penalized it. I think that the ChatGPTs and the Perplexities of the world will get smart enough to detect, especially if they wrote it themselves. I think they're going to get smart enough to spot this is AI generated and we're going to see something very similar. It's not going to get that recognition because an expert didn't write it.
Which is one of the reasons why PR is having such a wild moment at the moment, because the outputs of PR, all the articles you get in high domain authority, authentic articles are huge inputs to AI search. Many of them have done deals, obviously, with many of the, OpenAI, Anthropic, etc., Google have done deals with publishers, Axel Springer, etc., to suck in their content. And so, if you're in there, that's going to help because they know those are not AI generated and they're authoritative. So we're seeing, again, PR is great for that. And it's great for the overall brand awareness, which we just talked about earlier. So almost every PR person I know is sort of will tell you that as soon as possible because it's a big benefit. But I do think that aligning PR with your GEO efforts, how those things align, there's some emerging best practices there. If your PR team isn't already aware of this, but not talking to the SEO and GEO team, then that's a meeting to set up right now. All right. We spent a lot of time on that one, but it's literally the biggest thing going on in tech marketing at the moment. Let's talk a little bit about video here and short form video. Okay. So here's some stats and then we'll talk about it. B2B video consumption under 90 seconds grew 28% year on year. 60% of B2B buyers prefer short form videos in the early stages of the buying process. As a HubSpot data from H1 2025. And LinkedIn says that short educational videos get 2.4 times higher engagement than traditional posts. So short form, under 90 seconds video is having a moment and people like it. Why do you think that's taken off, Nicole?
I think it's because B2B buyers are human. They've taken their TikTok habits and brought them to work, is what I really think. I think it's true. It's just if you can get insights into something in under 90 seconds, why do you need 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes? We're all busy. We need to learn things like now. And you know what? If 90 seconds is actually that's quite a long time. Going back to my TV days, having to do a minute and a half of something live with no script and no nothing and just going on the fly, 90 seconds is an eternity. So there's a lot you can convey in 90 seconds. I'm not surprised by this stat. I think it helps more tech brands break into video because they don't have to think in terms of big, giant, long production. They can think in terms of shorter, snappier, bite-sized chunks, which makes it a little less intimidating if you're diving into video for the first time. You don't have to make a movie. You can have some really short, interesting educational stuff that can work wonders.
Yeah. Just find, your evangelist and get them on that Loom walkthrough of the product around a particular feature or a new feature. It'd be great to have product marketing crank out some walkthroughs. So there's a whole bunch of assets for social, your YouTube channel, to embed in emails, like everywhere. We are visual animals, and a lot of people are visual thinkers. You can kind of tell when they look up. I do that. So as a visual person, video is a great way to get through to people. And it probably does come from Instagram Reels and TikTok, etc. Just, we're bringing it to work because our attention spans are shorter and we want to be told the information and we're in and we're out. So cater to that. And then if your spokespeople are anxious about being on video, we had an episode all about building personal brands with some best practices about presentation and how to sort of build up to that. So, executive visibility with your senior team is really a go-to strategy in PR at the moment. And obviously video is a key part of that. So getting people comfortable with just flicking on a camera and talking about that. Yeah, more video. Try and make sure it's authentic, right? Because you're trying to get across the brand. And that goes to our deepfake AI generated comments earlier. If you can get humans behind it, explaining things in a way that creates that emotional bond, is much more real. So we like that. If you can get customers on video, great. Video case studies. That's a real person talking about your product, putting their face and name behind it, talking directly to your prospects. And then you can use that in lots of different ways. Let's walk through some of those.
Oh, 100%. Video case studies are worth their weight in gold. It's probably the best video you can create. You can use it in a lot of ways. You could use it whole, slice and dice it for different video clips on social. The social platforms favor video. I think that's part of the reason why LinkedIn says video posts are getting more engagement, probably getting a lot more attention. Turn some of those things into paid. Embed a quick testimonial in an email. There's a million different things you could do. If you've got a customer on video, the sky is the limit of what you can do with that.
Right. You can chop it up, take the script in Optimize. This is going to be great. So that's why we see a lot of companies like at their user conference. If you're big enough to do a user conference and you get people together, you can have a little booth, get the video team in there. Biggest customers are often coming to talk about their use case. Just put them all through the booth, collect 10, 20 customer videos in one go. That's going to fuel your voice of the customer program for the rest of the year in 1, 2 minute, 15-second slices. Brilliant stuff. Okay, let's talk about RevOps. What is RevOps? For those that might be unfamiliar, it's when you combine marketing, sales, and customer success. So you're sort of managing the whole customer journey from a prospect all the way through to sort of making them successful and customer loyalty, and having one person oversee that. We talked to Daniel Rock, a CRO, all about the challenges because they come from a sales side or they come from a marketing side. Some come from customer success too. It's a massive role. Here's a data point from Forrester. 65% of B2B organizations are aligning RevOps, including marketing, under one exec. So, one person to oversee that whole life cycle. Of that, 72% of marketers are sharing their dashboards with the rest of customer success and sales. That's the Salesforce data from May. Gartner says that RevOps tooling spending, like the technology to underline this, went up 14% year on year, largely coming out of the marketing budget. So, obviously, anyone who's done marketing trying to track from marketing CRM through the sales CRM, through the customer success, maybe that's HubSpot all the way, but often it's HubSpot and Salesforce and Zendesk, and you're just trying to combine all those things. It's super difficult. So it doesn't surprise me that spending there is going up. What do you think about this trend, Nicole, with 65% of companies doing this?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I think that number's just going to keep going up. And I know we work closely with a couple of CROs. They're joining our regular syncs and getting our monthly reports, and they're asking questions, helping to brainstorm ideas for lead gen magnets. They're very involved. So I think what marketing needs to think about is this CRO position, because they're in charge of so much. What does that mean for what you're reporting back to them? It means you've got to kind of tick it up a level. What do they need to know? And what do they need to know? One, just so they know how their department is performing. Two, how the business is performing. And what do they need to know that they could go back to their CEO with and say, hey, we are making an impact. This is what we've accomplished. This is what we're on the path to doing. And I think that takes a lot of marketers out of their comfort zone when it comes to data analysis and reporting and optimizing, because it really is about impact on the business. I think a CRO will probably be the first one to tell you when you're talking about vanity metrics. So it's really about thinking at a higher level as to what are you doing on a daily basis that is really, truly affecting the business and moving the needle of the entire company, not just marketing.
That's right. And look, I would say from an agency perspective, it's great to work with the CRO because you get that frontline experience about what prospects are saying to sales, what the expectation that's being sort of crafted in marketing and sales, what it actually is with customers once they convert. Because we obviously don't want to be making promises that we can't fulfill. And so you get a broader perspective and faster feedback. We love the feedback, particularly from sales. So, what's changed, that stuff is great for marketing because you can then feed it in, overcome new objections to sale, jump on new trends because prospects are right there asking at the front lines. The next topic here, Nicole, is going to be talking about different content formats. Okay, so 53% of B2B buyers prefer interactive, snackable content over ebooks. That's from the Content Marketing Institute back in April. We're certainly seeing that in our data. Here's a fun one. Micro webinars under 15 minutes saw a 35% higher sign-up rate versus traditional webinars. So I know a lot of our listeners will be running webinar programs. Think about a 15-minute version of that, where you can just sort of slot it in. Maybe I can watch it on demand. That's coming from On24, obviously, involved in that space. So obviously they have a lot of data about that. And then 42% of buyers downloaded fewer PDFs in favor of carousels and short form webinars. Again, this is a Path Factory data. People are maybe moving away from the bigger conversion asset, the ebook, into more visual, shorter form types of content, right, Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this goes hand in hand with the shorter video trends. We have shorter attention spans. We have less time. I think we can all think of webinars that we've sat through that have been an hour long and thought this could be half as long, and I would still have learned the same thing. And I think if you're creating a micro webinar, that's a great challenge because you're not filling 60 minutes. What do you have to share in 15 minutes? That truly is a lunch and learn right there. If you could do it in 15 minutes, I think at 60 minutes, people start checking their email and Slack and that kind of thing. But if you can pack a lot of information into 15 minutes, you're going to have some very happy attendees.
Yeah, I like that. And I also think it's just less daunting, right? Okay, I got 15 minutes to fill here. I don't know. So I'm going to base it on some slides, a couple of minutes of slides. It's 7 slides, there's an in and an out. Like, it's 10 minutes of stuff, or maybe less if you're asking questions. Okay, I can go to my SME and ask them to do that. And they're not going to feel like, oh gosh, I just don't have the bandwidth to do this right now. So I think you can increase the frequency of them. I love that idea. I think people are getting a bit tired of the sort of static landing page ebook. We've talked about, hey, how about ungating that and using other intent signals to de-anonymize those people and use the follow-up? I think that's the direction it's going. Do you think that's still worth doing the ebooks, Nicole? Does that still have a place in the sort of content strategy?
I think it absolutely does, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a content marketer, but I think it absolutely does, especially in tech where stuff is hard. Sometimes there's a lot to unpack, and if you're a CTO or somebody really techie and you're diving into something important, say it's a cybersecurity solution or some SaaS platform that's really going to change the way your business operates, you're going to want to do some due diligence into a meteor asset. I was doing some analysis for a larger client of ours who has a lot of different types of gated content. And the ebooks and the white papers combined were almost 50% of their monthly downloads. The demand is still there. People say ebooks can be a little old school. I tend to agree they can, but they can also be really helpful. So I wouldn't give them up entirely, but I would think of ways that you can generate leads and share information in more creative ways. Maybe it is something interactive. Maybe it's a quiz or an assessment or an ROI calculator, something that gives people a chance to actually click on something, do something, and explore something. That's something that they really are going to remember you for, as opposed to that PDF they read and then went about their life.
Right. And I think a lot of those PDFs became glorified brochures, really. You paid the price of your email and got a sales brochure, which you should have just got for free anyway. And bonus, a sales call. So that rather salted the earth for some of that. But with the zero-click search behavior, we've been talking about having playbooks that are maybe a little bit deeper down into how to do this rather than sort of educational of what is this to this is actually how to do it from people who do it at that implementation middle low funnel level. That's probably where to start, making sure if you haven't got that, make sure that you're starting to sort of build that stuff out. I mean, demand for content has gone up enormously with GEO, but I think the playbooks sort of is where we're seeing a little bit higher conversion as well. Let's just quickly touch on messaging, and then I want to talk about brand before we wrap here. This one I think is fairly straightforward. Like 59% of B2B buyers now ranking demonstrated ROI as their top priority, according to the Demand Gen report Q1 2025. Buy cycles are going out to 11.3 months on average from 9.8, which they were in 2023, says Gartner. So the buy cycles are getting longer. People want more ROI. 46% of CMOs said they've shifted their messaging to emphasize cost savings and risk reduction, says Forrester. So, all of that says to me, buyers are more cautious. They want return. They don't want to invest in something that is going to not work. And I mean, that could impact their business. That could impact their own personal careers. Marketers just need to be aware of this, right? And orient more towards ROI, social proof. But there's also that longevity, that like lengthening of the buy cycle. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that's huge, especially in tech where, hey, things are expensive. I think part of that increase is, to your point, people don't want to get it wrong. They want to do their due diligence. And I think that's why you need GEO, you need AI to cite you and put you in contention right at the beginning of the journey. You also need a comprehensive website where people can find all kinds of information. You need case studies and you need a lot of them. You need to show what you actually do. You need content that shows that where you walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So I think part of it is buyers don't want to get it wrong. But I think a big part of it also is buying committees keep getting bigger. I've seen stats where the average buying committee is 10 or more people. You get to the enterprise level, it could be 20 or more. I mean, that's a lot of people. That's like a village of people coming together and deciding something. And that's not even including all the influencers and everything. You've got procurement, you've got all these different groups coming together with very strong opinions. It's something important. It's a big purchase. It's not surprising at all that it's gone up a month and a half in the past 2 years, that's not surprising at all. I think there's 2 very big forces at work here, and unfortunately for tech brands who just, "We wanna make money, we wanna show our value, we wanna show our worth, we wanna show that we can scale," the buyers just aren't ready, and you're gonna have to be patient with them.
Yeah. From a marketing perspective, patience is a secret weapon for all marketers. Staying top of mind, moving them along, keeping the deal flowing, piling on that social proof, as you say, all those extra cases that you can kind of arm your salespeople with. Just keep that evolving, because obviously the longer the buy cycle takes, the more likely something is going to change. A new technology comes along, a new competitor comes into the market, their needs change. I mean, lengthening buy cycles means risk. The quicker you can do it, the better, because you've got them. So, how do you keep them engaged is a marketing challenge. And then lastly, we've got some stats around brand and differentiation. So 81% of marketers say a strong brand voice is more important than ever amid generative content saturation, says SEMrush. 74% of B2B buyers trust customer success stories, again, more than branded content, says Edelman's Trust Barometer. And LinkedIn reports that founder stories or personal brand content gets 21% higher engagement. Open LinkedIn and you'll see that. They've really dived into that. But let's just talk about this brand voice topic here amongst all this generative AI slop. How do you keep your brand voice authentic, even if you want to leverage AI?
I think the key is what we talk about at Firebrand is being AI enhanced. There's a lot of brands that want to go AI only. They want to save the time and maybe save headcount. And they think that just AI agents everywhere, doing everything, getting everything out the door. It's a nice visual to have, but it's not realistic right now. I think the biggest thing right now is using AI for efficiency gains, up-leveling your data analysis, letting it do things that you can't do in a timely fashion. But if you want to keep your brand voice in check, even with custom GPTs, which can be great for training on your specific brand voice, that's a great way to leverage AI. But there has to be humans involved. There just has to be. As much as we would all love for a custom GPT to write all the content and say, here's the brand voice, go write a bunch of stuff that aligns with it, you still need human insight, human empathy, the human qualities that AI just can't provide. And also, you've got to make sure that the output's correct. Even with some custom GPTs, we've seen content come out of it, and it's like, that's not even close to what we told you the brand voice was. It will hallucinate a little bit when it comes to that kind of thing. So it just goes back to good old fashioned humans.
Yeah, and you have this idea of the logo test. Hey, if I put my hand over the logo on this piece of copy, can you tell it's me? I think that this applies here, right? If your competitor would say this and it would sound the same, it's probably not strong enough in your brand voice. This often goes to the very sort of fundamental point of having the brand defined, having the messaging defined, investing that time up front so that you have a brand, you have a brand voice, you have the messaging, we know what we want to say, and we have a point of view. And then that's reflected in all the content that we produce. If it starts to look generic, it's probably because you haven't done that higher strategic foundational work to define those things. And then, so of course, at the end, this blog post or this ebook or this opinion piece, you could have put any company on this. Anyone in our space could have said this, and it doesn't relate back to us. If you think that, then you can bet that your audience is going to think that. Maybe they'll read the information, but they're not going to go, okay, I'm tying this to your brand. And you've done the work, but you haven't got the outcome that you want. And so I do think amid all this, the increase in content, brand becomes much more vital, and making that come alive and really understanding it. It can feel soft, like a luxury, but that luxury is now becoming mandatory. So I think that goes to the sort of core of this challenge here. Okay, Nicole, thanks for that. I think this is a great place to wrap this up. It's been a fascinating 6 months, and I really feel like we're moving into an era where AI is just front and center and being deployed, sometimes well, sometimes badly. I feel like there's a lot of prognostications about SEO is dead or PR is dead or well, this doesn't work or, the rules have changed. The rules are changing and you need to sort of navigate through that. And there's a lot of sort of anxiety out there. So we wanted to look at some of the data coming out so that when you're making your investments, you know exactly where to put them. And so I think the data sort of tells the story there. A really useful analysis as we enter into H2 here. So Nicole, thank you. Thanks to you for listening. Please drop us a comment or a like and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. We'll be here. And with that, we'll see you all again next week.